The cast and world of Granblue Fantasy naturally lent themselves to a fighting game setting when Arc System Works first released Granblue Fantasy Versus on PlayStation 4. With updates and sequels being inevitable, it was time to give the game a major overhaul for the PlayStation 5. Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising is essentially an enhanced and expanded edition of the fighting game for newer hardware, but there is still a competent PS4 version available if you choose to go that route. However, beyond just superior graphics, this release introduces essential rollback netcode alongside new gameplay content and features. So whether you're a fan of fighting games or the broader Granblue Fantasy franchise, this is a pretty packed release that offers a great deal of value.
She says you're quite an expert in the kitchen. How about making me a meal sometime? Don't forget these two.
Well, that can certainly be arranged. But first, let's work up that appetite. You're in for a real treat.
Granblue Fantasy initially found its success as a mobile RPG, but the latest fighting game isn't strictly for fans of the IP. Anyone looking for an enjoyable and polished fighting game can probably jump in without knowing much about the source material. Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising does an excellent job of standing on its own, especially in a way that introduces such an established game world to players who may not be familiar with it at all. The game's story mode is comprehensive and beautifully presented, fully voice acted with engaging cinematic sequences. While story modes in fighting games tend to drag on a bit, here the player remains engaged, and the action is frequent enough to prevent dialogue sequences from overstaying their welcome. In such a crowded fighting game landscape with bigger franchises leading the charge, it can be initially challenging to determine how well Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising fits into such a competitive scene. However, it needs to be said that this is probably as polished as a fighting game can come, given its backing by Arc System Works. Fans of the developer have been enjoying Guilty Gear Strive since its release, and yet there has always been a lingering demand for a new BlazBlue game, an IP that has a tremendous presence in the previous gaming generation. Here's the thing though, Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising is undoubtedly probably a BlazBlue game in all but the name. From the fighting mechanics to the fantasy character designs and even their fighting styles, many of the core essential elements are shared, and honestly, that's a pretty good thing. The gameplay offers a signature fast-paced anime fighting experience that Arc System Works fans have come to love, providing a welcome alternative to the heavier style of Guilty Gear. Each character is mechanically unique, with a dedicated special attack bringing out their signature skill. Taking a page from its RPG roots, each character has specific special moves and skills visible under their health bar, and using these specials then requires a brief cooldown before the same skill can be used again. In a way, this effectively mitigates spamming and button mashing, encouraging a more balanced flow of combat and pushing players towards setting up combos. It's not a handicap by any means, instead it makes the fighting feel strategic and tempers the otherwise blistering pace. The game feels great to play, and while the graphical prowess may not be on the same level as Guilty Gear Strive, the artistic direction of the franchise shines through, and the character designs are fascinating. The cast is expertly presented, with a ton of personality, and each of them is a wonder to discover. To have such a mechanically diverse and distinct cast of characters with hardly a common baseline is no easy feat. It may not be the most perfectly balanced game out there, but it creates a space where the fighting game veterans and casual players can enjoy coming to grips with each other. The detailed tutorial and training provide a comprehensive overview of each of the characters' intricate fighting styles. At the same time, there are simplified guides to help players capture the essence of each character's moveset, even suggesting a specific strategy against certain characters. The point is, even when the execution of the fighting inevitably becomes messy and unbalanced, there's no denying how well thought out everything is, given how many diverse fighting systems are being accommodated. This is a staggering release, with an enormous cast of characters, all the essential gameplay modes, and a wealth of unlockable content using in-game currency. It's hard to fault this release as a value proposition, not to mention the host of online multiplayer modes, all held together by Rollback netcode. What remains to be seen is whether there is a lasting community when we have new Guilty Gear, new Street Fighter, and soon a new Tekken. Even if the online community doesn't quite take off, there's so much in terms of single-player content. The story mode is an adventure that brings the game world to life, and the arcade mode provides a satisfying challenge. On top of that, there are daily challenges, all of which allow players to earn in-game currency and unlock a wealth of content in the form of costumes, artwork, skins, and other things. Even in such a crowded space, Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising is a quality fighting game and comes in a generous package with no shortage of single-player or multiplayer content. It looks the part and performs remarkably well where it matters most. Whether it successfully carves out a consistent online community remains to be seen, but even on its own, I feel this could be a good way to hold over BlazBlue fans until whenever that game gets a new release. Noisy Pixel is giving Granblue Fantasy Versus Rising an 8 out of 10. Thanks for watching. This video is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers providing independent gaming coverage through news, reviews, previews, and more. Check out our Patreon to help support our continued growth, and subscribe to keep up with all our feature content.
Noisy Pixel.